Hello, everyone. Dr. Judy here. Dr. Judy, WTF with the Freud. And welcome to the show. For those of you who have been listening for a long time, you know much about the mind map and my way of thinking, and I'm going to get into that. And so I want to start out by saying the title of the show, which is Boundaries, Law of Attraction versus Law of Allowance. So I want to ask everyone out there, how many of you believe in the law of attraction? I think on some level, many would raise your hand and say, yeah, of course, whatever we concentrate and focus on is something that we're going to invite into our lives. However, what we don't think about is the law of allowance, and that's where boundaries are going to come in. And of course, we could attract things into our lives. However, do we really want to allow them in? And that's what we're going to talk about, everyone. And this is a call-in show, and that call-in number is 323-843-2826. I'm Dr. Judy Rosenberg. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, and I am the founder of the Be the Cause mind map system for healing human disconnect. And this is a system based on old childhood wounds that shadow over us, childhood wounds that we react to, and then we encode into the fiber of our being. And let me know when that mind map is up there and I can detail it a little bit more. Thank you so much. And so we're looking at the 9 panels, and the top 3 represent the past. The middle 3 represent the craziness, the chaos, the defensiveness, and the breakdowns of the here and now. And the last 3 panels represent the shift out of all of the mess and the healing, and then ultimately the balance and the unity that we would like to achieve in our lives. So a little bit about the mind map and why we, the team, works with the mind map. We work with the mind map because it's important that we, number one, get to the cause of the problem. Number 2, it's important that there be a system of healing. And number 3, it's important that you, whoever is learning from the mind map, learn to think like a shrink, and that you become strong and independent of therapy, and eventually you won't need us anymore, or won't need as much of us, or will only need us every now and then. So this is a process of a journey, a psychological journey from through to. And I want to focus tonight on boundaries, and also this is a call-in show, everyone. So that number again, 323-843-2826. And I want to talk about panel number 5. What is a boundary? Well, a boundary is something that represents metaphorically a limit, kind of like a fence around us. It could be a physical boundary, it could be an emotional boundary, it could be an ethical boundary. There are lots of different kinds of boundaries, and we're going to look at how to use our boundaries to stay emotionally safe. We're going to look at how to use our boundaries to allow the good in. We're going to look at how to keep out the bad, let in the good, so to speak. And so I want to start with Biology 101, which talks about cell membranes. And I think it's a perfect metaphor for a cell membrane, because cell membranes by nature have the qualities of shutting down, they have the qualities of letting in nutrients, and they also have the qualities of limiting what they let in and the flow that goes out. So with the metaphor of the biological model, we can begin to use it psychologically to help us. Nature is a beautiful thing, and the way nature is set up can teach us so much. And I love applied science from one field to the other. And I also want to thank my biology teacher, Mrs. Susie Sprouse, who really inspired me to think this way. And somehow all that biological information ended up in my mind map system. So first I want to start by defining the boundary. If you want to live an authentic, meaningful life, you need to master the art of disappointing and upsetting others, hurting feelings, and living with the reality that some people just won't like you. And this is a quote by Cheryl Richards from an article in Psychology Today by Linda Esposito, and this came out in June of 2019. So not everyone is going to like your boundaries. On the contrary, people usually don't. And why don't they? Because who wants to be said no to? Children certainly like them the least. Mommy, can I have some ice cream? No, not now. You have to wait. Children don't like to wait. Adults also don't like to wait. And adults also don't like to be said no to. So getting a little bit more detailed in so far as what is a boundary, and I'm referring to this particular article, it's an invisible line you draw around yourself to identify what is acceptable behavior and unacceptable behavior. That would be one way to use the boundaries. The beauty of boundaries is that they are fluid and ever evolving. And some of them are looser and extend out, and other boundaries are a little bit tighter. As a result of the psychological stresses that we face on a daily basis, we can adjust our boundaries again to stay safe and take in what we need and keep out what we don't need. So they come in many forms. Again, physical boundaries, space. I deal a lot with people from different cultures, and I just want to acknowledge all the beautiful people that call in from all over the world. And one of the interests of mine is to delve into cultural rules and norms, and in this case, boundaries apply to this because in some cultures, personal space is going to express through a very, very close gap between one person to the other. In other cultures, staying further away and distancing is just the cultural norm. So you can imagine when someone from, let's say, South America meets someone from Norway, they might feel insulted because the Norwegian person might back up a little bit, and to them that's very normal, and the South American person might feel insulted, and vice versa, the Norwegian person might feel a little bit smothered. So this is something that we want to pay attention to and not necessarily make meaning, automatic meaning out of, and make it to mean that they don't like us or that they're trying to smother us or there's something wrong with their way of communicating physically with other people. Now, mental boundaries apply to your thoughts, values, and opinions. Are you capable of having an open-minded, flexible attitude? Or on the contrary, are you closed-minded and opinionated and don't really want to consider other people's opinions? This is all related to boundaries, and there are others. There are financial boundaries. How much money are you going to give other people or lend money to other people, or are you even going to, or where are you going to start spending, where are you going to stop spending? So you can see that boundaries apply to so many areas of our lives. They apply to sexual behavior. They apply to our spiritual life. They apply to our moral behavior. And so as a result of this, there is this, let's say that back to that line where we're either letting people in, letting philosophies in, or keeping them out. So back in many years ago, I don't know the date, there was a movie and a book out by Esther and Jerry Hicks called The Law of Attraction. And so it had a magical quality about it, and everyone was very enthusiastic about the law of attraction, which says that which is like unto itself is drawn. In other words, birds of a feather flock together. You are actually talking about the law of attraction when you're looking at how your thoughts are manifesting, pulling in from the universe, manifesting your thoughts and using energetically your vibrational frequency of concentrating on what you do want to invite these things in. What people often don't talk about is the law of allowance. So why am I doing this show? I'm doing the show to really discuss how a lot of times we're just so happy to attract a person or attract a job. Yay, I've been concentrating on this job for so long. I've been concentrating on this relationship for so long. And congratulations, you get the job or you get the relationship. So now what? So can you then step back and say, geez, this law of attraction is working, so I can just kick back and relax and let my good vibrational energy flow and everything's going to be okay. Well, it would be very nice if it worked that way. However, oftentimes when we attract something, we have to see over time, over behavior, over the course of experience with what we attracted, to see whether we're going to allow that job to continue or allow that person into our lives. And so what we have to do is we have to use good judgment as opposed to judging. We're using good judgment. So I'm going to go back into the panels and show how these boundaries get knocked down and violated, and how we get infiltrated, and how idealistic thinking can knock down boundaries and then make allowances where allowances don't really work for us. So let's go to panel number 1 and deconstruct some of this. So panel number 1 talks about wounds. What are these wounds? 5 childhood wounds. There is obviously physical abuse, there is sexual abuse, there is verbal emotional abuse, and then there is neglect, emotional, physical neglect, and then there is smothering. When our boundaries are violated, then those walls of protection start coming down. When we're verbally abused, then we tend to pattern after allowing people to verbally abuse us. If we've been sexually groomed to be provocative, then we can end up allowing people to use us that way. So I wanted you to all understand that this law of allowance is very important, because that's where our boundaries come in. And so it's not just what we attract. And again, this is a call-in show, everyone. So please do get on the couch and talk about what you allow into your life and what you don't allow into your life, what you've attracted into your life, and then what you're shocked about after you've attracted into your life, to find out that, maybe you were just too comfortable and happy that you were able to attract this and not really give it the time and the opportunity to let things unfold and to understand, what is this that I attracted? And now, what is it that I'm allowing? So a lot of the people that I work with have a poor sense of allowance, is how I put it. So they model themselves after their parents. So once they experience these childhood wounds, which I think the entire race has experienced in one way or another, then what happens is that parents set the bar. So, for example, if you've been physically abused by your parents, there may be a tendency to tolerate or allow for physical abuse to happen to you. Now, I know there are people out there saying, oh my God, no, I learned not to allow that. And that's very possible. So you can go through the experience of physical or emotional or sexual abuse and say, I have learned that this is not okay. I have learned that this is not okay for myself, and I've learned that this is not okay for others. If that's the case, fantastic, fantastic. So you're on a growth trajectory and you're able to grow from other people's poor boundaries, other people's poor treatment of you, and morph out of that and make some fresh and new decisions for yourself. Unfortunately, many people who are wounded in childhood will have horrible reactions to these wounds, and then they will encode these reactions into panel 3, negative core beliefs about themselves and the world. And so they will think that perhaps they're unworthy or unlovable or stupid or ugly. I hear all kinds of things every day in my office. And so when these core beliefs land, then you can see, in essence, that our boundaries toward ourselves are being violated because we're allowing the messages of the past to infiltrate into the fiber of our being and rule us. So here is the first boundary violation toward ourselves, is that we allow these, as I put it, psychoviruses to enter our psyche and then slowly erode the fiber of our being and erode our self-esteem in the process of all of this. So can you see that the first allowance is really giving our parents the allowance to define us? And so we have parents, and just because we are in a family, it doesn't mean that the information that's trickling down to us or has trickled down on a multi-generational scale necessarily is good information. So how then can we discriminate and distinguish what we want to allow to define us? How can we distinguish and discriminate what belongs to us and what is the definition of us and who we are versus what we came to believe is so? And a lot of this is explained in my book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect. And if you do not have a copy of that, please feel free to reach out. Please feel free to get your free PDF copy of it. We'll send it along with a lot of links and information to video shows and blogs on our website. And we have all kinds of really amazing blogs on the website. So please check it out, drjudywtf.com or psychologicalhealingcenter.com. It's all there for you. So going back to law of allowance. So the first law is our parents are gods. Our parents are our source. Mommy knows best. Daddy knows best. Remember that TV show, Father Knows Best? Well, it came from some sort of a philosophy. They're supposed to know best, except that many times they don't know best. And because of their psychological injuries, they have soaked up a lot of misinformation and they're reacting to a bunch of wounds of their own. And so their blueprint is not the healthiest. However, because they're our parents and because we know no better, we allow them to infiltrate into our self-definition. And so just like Lego pieces, as a metaphor, we start putting the puzzle of who we are together based on what they say and based on how they look at us or don't look at us or treat us or don't treat us. And then we start building this self-definition. Let's go back to that panel 3, and you can see that this structure, I'm going to call the blue ribbon on the DNA strand the male energy, the father energy, and the pink ribbon, the mother energy. And together they're supposed to form pillars that we grow from, and pillars who hold us up and nurture us and allow us to climb the ladder of growth, whether it be health, whether it be intellectual growth, spiritual growth. They're supposed to hold up the fortress for us, and we're supposed to climb up the ladder. If you look at panel 3, however, when we're not coded in a healthy manner, when we're coded with psychovirus, when we're coded with misinformation, when we're coded with multi-generational misinformation, then we're really building something that's not healthy, and we're building something that's not sustainable. So if you look at the little people on panel 3, you can see that they're not really progressing. One is just sitting around, the other is lying around and standing around, and there's no real energy or progression, and there's a lot of darkness. And by the way, if you would like a copy of the mind map and the mind map journal, I have a lot of information also on my website under the forms section, and you're welcome to download this information so that you can get copies of everything and that you could clearly see what I'm talking about from a graphics point of view. And so you see now how this structures us to think a certain way, act a certain way, morph ourselves a certain way. And now you could see that as a result of an unhealthy structure, what happens? Go to panel 4. We can look for ourselves. Look at the chaos. Look at the darkness. Look at the lack of structure here. So when we allow into the fiber of our being a lot of misinformation, when we allow crossing of boundaries, we get hit with a lot of chaos. And even though we might think that the source is a great source, mom, great source, dad, great source, if it's resulting in chaos, it can't be a great source. And again, this is a call-in show, everyone, so please feel free to call in. And let's talk about what you attracted and what you allowed and what kind of chaos resulted from this, and then how you defended against this chaos and how ultimately everything broke down. Because if you don't allow in the right elements, then obviously those defenses are going to break down. So let's go to panel number 5 and talk about these permeable, semi-permeable, and non-permeable membranes. So when we are not permeable, we actually are putting up thicker, heavier walls. So maybe these walls are not allowing for anything in, or maybe they're allowing only people in or experiences in that boost our narcissistic supply. So, for example, in the case of someone who is feeling a lack of self-confidence, they may need to boost their sense of self by having other people compliment them. They may boost their sense of self by having only important people surround them. So they may only allow important people in, and they may only allow people in who boost their sense of self-esteem. On the other hand, there are people who have been so injured that they go on lockdown, and then these walls go up, and within these walls is a very lonely, shut down person because they've been violated for so long that they don't have trust in the world any longer. They live in a psychological prison, if you will, and they allow in very little. And so from their point of view, the positive is that they feel safer. However, the negative is that they're dying on the vine. There's nothing coming in. There's no light. In the case of boundaries that are very, very loose, which is something that I've discussed particularly in my videos around looser borderline type personality disorders, where the boundaries are very, very open and maybe not as defined, and a lot of people are able to pass through these boundaries. Well, in these cases, people might get flooded and they might not have a very good sense of self because there's no sense of a core being. And so their emotions are always in flux, and it's really, really hard for them to have a sense of emotional peace. And this is a result of certain types of childhood abuse. And please refer to a lot of the YouTube episodes I do on borderline personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder. You'll see that the boundaries of people suffering this way are very, very opposite, and sometimes they're on a continuum also, so that at times people who are loose in their boundaries might shut down and then open up again, and it gets really dysregulated and confusing. So you can understand now why people will allow or disallow based on childhood injuries. So I want to know more about you and how you think about these things and what you've noticed in your life about what it is that is coming in and why you let it come in, and if you're even conscious of the fact that you're letting it come in, or you just let it come in and then find out later, not so good, not so healthy, not so psychologically supportive. So everyone, this is a call-in show, and that number again is 323-843-2826. So you can see from panel number 5 that that these boundaries also can work in different circumstances. For example, if we feel in danger, even if we're loose, generally we might shut down. Or if we feel more safe with a person, and even if we're very, very locked down, we might, with that person, open up. So these boundaries are, with healthy people, the more flexible and the more adaptive these boundaries can be, the better off you are, because then you can really flow with them and adjust them and allow them to let in the good when there is good and keep out the bad when there is bad. And so what happens in panel number 6? So if you look at panel 6, there is a complete breakdown here. And the breakdown is usually because the system is collapsing. So what do I mean by that? The system is collapsing because everything that built up from panel 1, 2, 3 has now resulted in chaos and defenses, and now those defenses are no longer holding up. So the defenses, like, let's say, alcohol or overeating or shutting down or using porn or sex addiction or gambling or whatever it is that is your particular defense mechanism, and you've allowed that defense mechanism to take root in your life, you could see that after a while it doesn't work anymore. And so when it doesn't work anymore, you start breaking down. And how do you break down? Well, a million ways. The alcoholic might get liver disease, or the foodaholic might end up with diabetes, or the person who has a porn addiction might lose relationships, or the gambleaholic might lose financial security and end up homeless. So you could see that when we start having better fortified boundaries and have healthier defense mechanisms, which goes back to better boundaries, then we're not as prone to breaking down. There's a regulatory system. There's a fence around this. And again, this is a call-in show. I'd really love to hear from you. And again, I want to thank my audience. And I really appreciate everyone from all over the world who has called me, has shared their pain with me. People from Europe, people from South America, people from Central America, people from the Arabic Republic, people from every country that I can think of. And please note that we do Skype therapy, so even if you're far, far away, you can still take advantage of the mind map system. We have a beautiful staff of people. We have people now who speak Spanish, and we have a particular PhD who speaks Vietnamese. I speak a little Hungarian. I know that's going to go a long way with most of you. Just kidding, but I do speak Hungarian, probably enough to conduct sessions in Hungarian. And just please ask what you need, and we can see if we can accommodate your need for a particular language or particular style of communication. And also, please note that Yitz Epstein, our life coach, is conducting seminars for narcissistic recovery, and that our grief recovery coach, Zalman Raksin, is also involved with the Psychological Healing Center. We're going to do a show, very, very sad incident that happened in May, Virginia Beach, and the Virginia Beach massacre. And if you have been affected by that and you're watching, please know that we at the Psychological Healing Center are going to start setting up support webinars for you. They will be free, and they will be for people who have been affected by the very horrid massacre that took place in May in Virginia Beach. And please reach out to us, and we will make sure that you have all the information that you need. And so how do these atrocities happen? Let's put it into the context of law of allowance. And this particular incident is a very sad example of law of allowance, because the little information that I know about the situation is that the person who gunned down the people was someone who was already flagged and showed red flags of emotional instability and aggression, and no one paid attention. And then it was too late. So we have to be really taking seriously what we allow to happen to our children, what we allow to happen at the workplace, what we allow to happen to our bodies, what we allow to happen on a global scale. And so we have to become much more aware and conscious, and know that we are gatekeepers. Not only are we gatekeepers for ourselves, we're gatekeepers for other people. And when these systems break down, when parent-child relationships break down and parents are no longer watching out for their children and standing up for their children, and children are being bullied, for example, when employers are not watching out for their employees and red flags are being ignored, and people are allowing for these tragedies to happen, we now need to understand how important it is to maintain these boundaries and to stay conscious and to understand the really not only the individual effects on us, but the global consequences of allowing boundary violations, ignoring, not paying attention when attention is very important to hone in on. So again, I really do want to hear from you. I want to understand more about how you thought you attracted something, and it was such a good feeling, because it's always a good feeling when you wish for something to happen and then you attract it, and then you take for granted that it's a good thing and you bypass your instincts and ignore the red flags because you're too busy being happy with what you attracted. So if you're attracting, that's amazing. However, watch what you're attracting and make sure that you're only allowing the things that you're attracting that are going to increase your well-being, your psychological well-being, your physical, your health well-being, and so on and so forth. So with that said, I want to talk a little bit about some case studies, general case studies, without violating anybody's confidentiality. Unfortunately, I noticed that a lot of people in my practice will seek help from me after the fact, and it's only through making the unconscious conscious that they finally wake up, and it's almost like they had a blind spot. So how do you know what to allow or what not to allow when you have this blind spot? You don't even know what questions to ask. So that's why it's so important to deconstruct what happened and who done it and trace the patterns that you now find yourself falling for. And so this is something very, very common in my practice. And for example, someone will come in and they'll say, I was in a relationship with someone and this person was amazing. And then in a few months, I discovered that something wasn't feeling right. And I'd say, well, what do you mean something wasn't feeling right? And then they'd say, well, that person started coming home late, or that person's behavior started changing, or gee, my love started smelling like alcohol. I had no idea that this person was drinking. And so I would then find out a little bit about how quickly the relationship progressed. And lo and behold, I'd find out that they were romantically involved in just a handful of days, and that they really started investing in this person and dreaming about future together and so on and so forth. And so they attracted this person, and they were so excited about the good dopamine and serotonin and wonderful feelings that they were feeling that they forgot to watch their boundaries. And they forgot to take inventory and use good judgment and take the time to really get to know the person. And this is so easy to do because we all want to have a good time. We all want to be loved. We all want adventure. We all want to have our dreams come true. We're all excited when we attract that right relationship. And so it can create in us a blind spot, and such a blind spot that it may take months or even years to start noticing, or maybe not even just noticing, but acknowledging that there's a problem. And so I want to tell you that if you start making excuses for yourself, like, nah, that's just a one-time incident, or no, that's not really that bad, or no, I understand that this is not really a problem, and start sweeping things under the rug, this is how you participate in allowances. And another thing I want to say about that is that we're not perfect human beings. So yes, we do give people passes. Yes, we do acknowledge our frailty, our humanity, our imperfections. And at the same time, if we ignore and allow, if we don't in some way bring up red flag issues and sweep them under the rug, that rug will start becoming very, very thick and will eventually not hold the dirt underneath it. The dirt will just be flying out from underneath it. It just won't hold. And so one thing that you could do is be very very, very aware that healthy people do bring up subjects. Healthy people are not afraid of having healthy dialogue and confrontation. And I want to refer to the peaceful healing dialogue, because the peaceful healing dialogue is a way of dialoguing in a way where you don't break the bond, where you're exploratory with the person, where you're able to really share your feelings with them and your concerns with them. And then what you want to watch for is that person willing and able to own their own stuff? Is this person willing to respect your boundaries? Is this person overly defensive, or are their defenses soft enough to allow you in and soft enough to consider how their behavior makes you feel? And again, this is a call-in show, everyone, so please feel free to call in 323-843-2826. And I have no idea what time it is, by the way. So I have how much? 20 minutes left. 20 minutes. Okay, great. So I want to keep going with these case studies because it's quite amazing. And the people who allow the most, of course, are children, because children do not understand that they may not be with the best family, the safest family, and so on. I want to get a little bit more into these different types of boundaries. There are 3 types of boundary challenged behaviors. Okay, so one is when you find yourself being emotionally vomited on. When every emotion is worn, when you're emotionally vomiting, when every emotion is worn on your sleeve, you assume others are comfortable with the intimate details of your life, your sexual dalliances, and your innermost thoughts, wishes, and failures. Social cues are often missed as self-awareness is lacking. So here's a boundary violation. People who think that they should share every little detail of their life. So what's wrong with this picture? Some may just say, well, I'm just being honest. I'm just telling you what I did with my ex-wife or my ex-husband or so on. However, we have to understand that other people may not be comfortable. This might be too much information, and you don't have to allow for people to fool you into thinking that their, quote, honesty is a good thing. You could check in with yourself and say, you know what, your honesty, thank you very much, is not such a good thing, because it's really stimulating a lot of very, very hurtful and jealous thoughts in my mind, and I just really don't want to hear about your past relationships. It's not something that I want to hold in my head. And this is something that you have a right to say no to. So go back to trusting your gut. How about immediate intimacy? The assumption of closeness upon meeting someone for the first time. Think indiscriminate friendships and love interests. It's about meeting your soulmate one week and feeling bereft the next because you were abandoned once again. So sometimes when we are hurting and aching for filling that hole in the soul, and we meet someone that fills it, at least temporarily, we are so grateful, we are so relieved, we're so in joy with life, we're so feeling loved and heard. Now, if that person and you are able to sustain a relationship that is, I think we're getting a call. That was a loud call. Okay. Call in ring. Yes, hi, you are on the couch with Dr. Judy. And what is your name, please?
Hi, Dr. Judy. My name is Ariana.
Hi, Ariana. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. And where are you calling from? What part of the world?
I'm calling from Florida.
Thank you for calling in. So what is going on in your life and how do you relate to boundaries, law of attraction, law of allowances, and how has that been affecting your life?
Well, there's been a lot going on, but one thing as far as boundaries that hit home was in my recent engagement, which I'm not in anymore, but
Okay.
my previous engagement, fiance, when we were together, was boundaries were a problem.
Okay.
With he he was very Christian, and he had a lot of Christian brothers influence, in how they, I guess, their relationships, and so it was an issue because they didn't really respect his boundaries.
They did not respect his boundaries. And how did that, like, give me some examples of how his friends affected his boundaries and then how it trickled down to you.
Well, one example, it was a while back, a few years ago, but I overheard a conversation because he always used, what is it, where you can talk out loud on your phone?
Like FaceTime or something like that? Or
yeah,
WhatsApp?
Where you can make your phone talk out loud, so like while you're driving or whatever. Anyway, I could hear the conversation.
Okay.
And the pastor was telling him that we shouldn't not to date me because we're not the same religion. And
okay.
So that I thought that was really overstepping boundaries. And and then back to present time, there's just they text him, call him, social media from all hours of the day and night, and so like even to the point of when we spent time together, the way how I know that is how often they call to while we're together, and we didn't spend that much time together, like a couple times a week.
And so what happened? So what happened when the person in the church said to your, what was he, boyfriend or fiance at the time?
Was what?
Was he your fiance or boyfriend at the time?
No, it wasn't. We were just starting to get back together after a few years of breakup.
Okay, and then did you talk to him about that and say, well, what do you think? Do you agree with what was
he's very nice and polite and never wants to hurt anyone's feelings. And so the only thing he said was how harsh it was. And I actually didn't really talk that much about it because I thought, well, if their relationship is like that, I just kind of exited quietly because it was just so like medieval, like so dark ages to me that I just didn't really want to.
You know what?
Like
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
He was really just start. He was just recently reborn or whatever, and so he was like really getting into it. It was like he went from Bible studies from like one night a week to 7 days a week. So I was like, I just he could just stay on his path, whatever's calling him. But we let say 8 years go by, and we had an opportunity again about a year ago to get back together, and I thought that we had grown enough to make it work. But what I realized is that he's very nice and polite and soft, and people are always telling him what to do, and I was trying to encourage him to listen to his, own voice. What do you want? And anyway, I think that what it comes down to is he wants to make everyone feel good, like a people
Like
pleaser.
a people pleaser. And
Yeah.
what's really, really important is that, speaking of law of allowance, if he already knew that you were different religions and that was not going to work for him, then the question would be, why did he allow for you to be in his life in the first place when he somewhere in his mind knew that you weren't a life fit? So what do you think was going on in that? If in other words, he was inviting in a deal breaker for him.
Well, but the thing is for him, I don't think it was a deal breaker, because I don't think he saw it that way. It's just that the pastor that he was, in the Bible study with, he was very aggressive, like wanting control. That's the feeling I got. It was like a control kind of thing. He's a perfect, person to get caught up in a cult, because his church was but it's one of those situations. It's not. I don't think I don't think either one of us felt like religion was an issue, because I'm Catholic. It's still kind of Christian. It's not. Anyway,
I think
it's not that different.
It's so subtle, because you waited 8 years. You were without each other for 8 years, and then you thought that you grew and had enough maturity to come together in a better way,
Yeah.
and yet you saw how easily he was influenced. Did you have any hint that he's this easily influenced? Did you know that?
Well, the thing is, um, he has his own, he's moving to the beat of his own drum. So his, I don't know, identification, or his, connection with higher power, God, Jesus, he identifies with Jesus. It didn't have those boundaries to him, is the feeling that I got. But it wasn't so much directly those people, which I feel like they didn't respect his space, but he has an issue with not establishing boundaries. So that was what to me in the end was, he wasn't hearing me. And
so when you got the drift, that he was going to put the words of the minister, whatever he was, and that before his commitment to you, and then you had your aha experience, like, I see. Okay.
It wasn't so much that. It was the pastors. They did have it. It was like, I don't know any other way to describe it other than they're just kept scratching, and I don't think they had the influence that they had hoped. But the thing that was over the boundary thing is, he spent so much time listening to them. It wasn't that he actually listened to them, but the time involved.
Oh, I see. So it took away. Okay, it took away from the time for the relationship.
Time, yeah, because he lived in say a half hour away, and and then the other thing is that he lives at home with his parents. He's South American, so that's like a socially acceptable thing. But by age 48, it's like, okay, brother.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So back to you. Okay. And back to you. What did you learn about? I'm sure you wanted this person back in your life, and may have even wished for another opportunity. So perhaps you attracted him back. Could you say that you attracted him back? Yes.
I would. Yes.
Yeah, you attracted him back. And then wasn't there a part of you that was overjoyed that he came back?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then, so don't you think that joy and that excitement would somehow shadow over some of the observable red flags, and maybe even you would excuse a few of them, and then maybe
Yes,
you did, right? Yes. And you
yes, yes.
allowed, and then some kind of a critical mass built up inside of you. And maybe it wasn't
Right.
just one incident, maybe was several
Oh
hours
God.
too long away from you, and then the observance that he was still living with his parents at age 48, and then at a certain point, what happened? What happened to your boundaries?
Well, um, but it came to a point of me asking, for him to hold off on some things until, if we're planning a wedding or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and he promised that he would. And then the very next day, he did the very thing, the very exact thing that I asked him to hold off with.
Okay.
And I didn't say no. I didn't have an ultimatum as far as like,
Mm-hmm.
don't do
Mm-hmm.
this, because I don't believe in that. But I said, at least wait. It doesn't have to be right now, but
So
maybe
so
in a few months.
I think that
So
you tested it and tested it, and you can communicate it. I know we're almost out of time, so for lack of more time on the matter, and you're definitely welcome to reach out to me at the Psychological Healing Center, is that when we get excited, we attract back, we get excited, and then we tend to overlook some things because we're so happy for the reunion, and then maybe it takes just a little bit more red flags to finally say, okay, that's enough already. So
yeah,
I'm going to end with a song, a Shrink That Tune song. And
okay.
again, feel free to reach out, and thank you. And I'm glad you found those boundaries, and I'm glad that all of this got revealed before you got married and had children. So that's a
Me
good
too.
thing.
I'm blessed with
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Thanks, Dr. Judy.
You're
You're
very.
awesome.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
you.
much. Thank you for calling in.
Good night.
Okay. Okay. Good night. All right. All right. And here is a song by Bruno Mars called Grenade. And I will only have a few minutes, I think, a couple of minutes to buzz through this, but 2 minutes. Wow. All of 2 minutes. Easy come, easy go. That's just how you live. Oh, take all, but you never give. So this is the boundary thing. They're taking it in. Should have known you were trouble from the first kiss. Had your eyes wide open. Were they open? So this is a person who had all the red flags that the person was taking, gave you all I had, tossed you, and you tossed it in the trash. Well, how many times before the guy or the girl woke up? Tossed you in the trash, you did. You gave me all your love. All I ever asked, because you don't understand, is I'd catch a grenade for you. I'd throw my hand on a blade for you, jump in front of a train for you. I'd do anything for you. I'd go through all the pain, take a bullet, die for you, baby. What you won't do the same. So this is a very unequal relationship. So this guy had very little boundaries because he just kept taking it and taking it. Black, black, black and blue, beat me till I'm numb. Tell the devil I said, hey, when you get back to where you're from. Mad woman, bad woman, that's just what you are. Yeah, he can blame and shame any time he wants, but he's not taking self-responsibility for choosing and allowing this person to be in his life. Gave you all I had and you tossed it in the trash. To give me all your love is all I ever asked. Well, he's kind of barking up the wrong tree, isn't he? Because this person is incapable. Anyway, I'm going to stop there. We're out of time. Thank you so much for tuning in, and feel free to reach out to me and the team at the Psychological Healing Center. Good night, everyone.